Let's take a look at a schema that can represent the information structure behind a faceted classification. So the top of the schema that you see on your screen here with items and item, that's not very unusual. We have an unbounded list of items. Those items have an ID, obviously the ID data type. They have a title and a description. It's really just sketching that stuff in. Obviously the items will be more sophisticated, or we want the items to be more sophisticated, but right now we're not focused on the information type, we're really focused on the access structure. And so I need at least some representation of items inside my schema so that we have something to do the faceted classification against. The items are represented in a relatively standard way, just the way we usually represent items. And I'll come back to the index ref ID in just a moment. But now let's go down to what I'm calling the multi-index. This is a small structure that's capable of representing as many different Audi indexes as we want it to. So if we look at this, if we look at the multi-index, it's a series of indexes, and each index has a title. One might be keyword, one might be accused, one might be author, one might be date, whatever it is, whatever the values in that index are. And now under the index we have a set of terms, 1 to as many terms as you want. Each index consists of a set of terms, right? Hopefully this is not too hard to understand. This is just the way we've been talking about indexes all the time. We have an index that has a set of terms. The only thing different so far is that I have multiple indexes all under that multi-index tag. And then the term itself is exceedingly simple. It has a title and ID. So I'm hoping you can see how the multi-index part of the schema, that fragment of a schema, can represent as many indexes as I want. They're only allowed to be flat indexes, right? There's no place in here for representing a hierarchical index. A nice little thought exercise is, how would you make those into hierarchical indexes? And we know that there's a variety of ways of doing that. We can make that term recursive, so that I can have terms inside of terms. We can make it referential, so that I have references to parent terms. I can make it explicit, where I have the words term and subterm, right? That would turn my multi-index into one that has functionality to create hierarchical indexes as well. But in this case, it's a flat index. So far we have two very simple ideas. We have items, and the items don't have much in them, and we have multi-indexes, and the multi-indexes don't have much except a flat list of titles and IDs. We need to make the link. The index is Audi, right? Those index terms are not inside the items, they're outside the items, but we do have this index ref ID. So what we've got here really is a hybrid system. The index itself is Audi, but there are pointers to the index terms inside the items. So each item has an unbounded list of index ref IDs, and those are pointing to different terms in the index. So each term in the index has an ID, and each item can point to as many terms in that index as I want. So I hope you can see how this structure, can represent everything we need to put multiple indexes on items. And having put multiple indexes on items, it's now really just a matter of transformation and representing those indexes to give me a faceted classification. And of course, the same underlying structure here, I hope you can see now very, very clearly. And hopefully this also shows you how looking at it from the architect's perspective can clarify a lot of things that on the surface look really complicated, right? We have an advanced search screen, looks really complicated. We have a faceted classification screen, looks even more complicated. But underlyingly, we have a really very simple structure. We have the ability to index items by multiple different indexes. And we can expose that on the screen through transforms as either a faceted classification or as an advanced search. And so you'll do some exercise work on how you do that exposing and what exactly the transforms are. Of course, I think it almost is I would call it a general principle of the way information systems work, is that a simple structure like this, there's complexity somewhere, right? You don't get that complex functionality for free. So where's the sophistication? It's not in the schema. You can see clearly that this schema is very simple, and it's based on things you learned, long ago about how schemas are constructed. Where the complexity is in the transform. The transform specifically to create the faceted classification, and the ability to progressively apply those criteria to the facet to progressively apply the index criteria to create a more and more sophisticated search. That's where the complexity is. And as you do the examples, you'll certainly see that the transform is far more complex than either the instance or the schema in this particular case.